The dark history of Silicon Valley, Cyberpunk was right. 40 years ago, science fiction writers imagined a future where corporations became more powerful than governments, where privacy died, and where technology turned humans into products to be optimized and sold. They called it Cyberpunk. We call it Tuesday in Silicon Valley. What's up, everyone? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most unsettling parallels in modern history. How the cyberpunk authors of the 1980s didn't just predict our digital future, they wrote the instruction manual for Silicon Valley's transformation from innovation hub to corporate dystopia. By the end of this video, you'll see how eerily accurate these fictional warnings were and why understanding this matters more than ever. Let's start with what cyberpunk actually predicted. This wasn't just cool aesthetics with neon lights and leather jackets. Cyberpunk authors identified 4 key pillars of future dystopia. First, corporate feudalism, companies replacing governments as the primary power structure, nation-states becoming irrelevant compared to corporate entities. Second, surveillance capitalism, every human action monitored, recorded, and monetized, privacy becoming a luxury good only the wealthy could afford. Third, algorithmic control, machines making decisions about human lives, with humans unable to understand or appeal these decisions. And fourth, digital class warfare, a stark divide between those who controlled the technology and those controlled by it. These weren't random dystopian fantasies. They were extrapolations of trends these authors saw emerging in the 1980s, trends that seemed impossible to most people at the time. But Silicon Valley didn't start dark. The early vision was genuinely utopian. Personal computers would democratize information. The internet would connect humanity and break down barriers between people and cultures. The founding mythology was powerful, brilliant outcasts working in garages to change the world. Technology as liberation, information wanting to be free. Steve Jobs positioned computers as tools of creative empowerment. Early internet pioneers built decentralized networks that no single entity could control. The culture celebrated hackers as digital freedom fighters. So what happened? How did we get from information wants to be free to your information wants to make us rich? The transformation followed the cyberpunk playbook with disturbing precision. Let's start with corporate feudalism. By the 2010s, tech companies weren't just businesses, they were digital nation-states with their own territories, laws, and foreign policies. Apple's market cap exceeded the GDP of most countries. Google controlled global information flow. Facebook determined what 2 billion people saw and believed. Amazon became the infrastructure layer for the entire internet economy. These companies began operating with sovereignty that made traditional governments look weak. They had private security forces, diplomatic relations with foreign powers, and the ability to cut off entire populations from digital services. When Twitter banned world leaders or Apple removed apps, they weren't making business decisions, they were exercising governmental power without democratic accountability. The surveillance infrastructure cyberpunk predicted? We built it ourselves voluntarily. Every search query, every location ping, every pause while scrolling became data points in behavioral profiles, more detailed than any government file. The genius was making surveillance feel like service. We didn't just accept tracking, we paid for the devices that enabled it. We carried location beacons and called them smartphones. We installed listening devices in our homes and called them smart speakers. Facebook knows when you're likely to make impulsive purchases. Google can predict health problems before symptoms appear. Amazon knows your family dynamics from shipping patterns. Privacy didn't die in a dramatic battle. It was traded away gradually for convenience, one terms of service agreement at a time. Perhaps most eerily, cyberpunk's prediction of algorithmic control over human behavior became the foundation of a trillion-dollar economy. Recommendation algorithms don't just suggest content, they shape reality. They determine what news you see, influencing elections. They decide who you might date, affecting relationships. They curate your social connections, determining which friendships survive. These systems exhibit behaviors their creators don't understand. When YouTube's algorithm started recommending increasingly extreme content, engineers couldn't explain why. When Facebook's algorithm amplified divisive content, it wasn't intentional, but it was profitable. We're living with artificial intelligences that optimize for engagement above truth, profit above human well-being. Finally, the digital divide Cyberpunk predicted has become the defining inequality of our time. Not just who has internet access, but who understands and controls the systems that increasingly govern our lives. On one side, tech executives who understand how the algorithms work, send their children to screen-free private schools, and use privacy tools unavailable to ordinary users. On the other side, billions of people whose lives are shaped by systems they can't see, understand, or escape. Gig workers rated by algorithmic managers. Job applicants filtered by resume-scanning AI. Criminal defendants sentenced by predictive models. The cyberpunk console cowboys have been replaced by data scientists and machine learning engineers, but the power dynamic remains the same. But here's what makes our timeline darker than most cyberpunk fiction. We chose this. The dystopia didn't arrive with jackbooted thugs. It arrived with free shipping, personalized recommendations, and infinite scroll. Silicon Valley's masterstroke was making dependency feel like empowerment. Every surveillance tool was packaged as a feature. Every algorithm was positioned as helpful assistance. Every data harvest was framed as personalization. We didn't lose our agency in a dramatic battle. We handed it over in exchange for not having to remember our passwords or decide what to watch next. The addiction was engineered. Former tech executives now admit they designed these systems to be habit-forming, using techniques borrowed from casinos and behavioral psychology. We became willing participants in our own surveillance because it felt like getting better service. Where does this leave us today? We're living in a world that would be recognizable to any cyberpunk author from 1984. 5 companies control most digital infrastructure. Democratic governments struggle to regulate entities more powerful than most nation-states. Algorithmic systems make life-altering decisions about loans, jobs, healthcare, and criminal justice with minimal human oversight. The COVID pandemic accelerated every dystopian trend. Remote work made us more dependent on digital platforms. Social media became the primary battleground for truth itself. Supply chain disruptions revealed how much power Amazon had accumulated. But unlike cyberpunk heroes, we don't have console cowboys coming to save us. The resistance, if it comes, has to come from collective action. So what do we do with this knowledge? First, we stop treating this trajectory as inevitable. Cyberpunk was a warning, not a blueprint. We can demand stronger privacy regulations, support alternative platforms that don't extract data, and vote for leaders who understand these issues. We can teach digital literacy and critical thinking about algorithmic systems. Most importantly, we can remember that technology is a tool, not a master. The future isn't predetermined, it's the result of choices we make collectively. Some encouraging signs are emerging. The EU is implementing stronger data protection laws. Antitrust investigations are challenging tech monopolies. Alternative social networks are gaining traction. A new generation is growing up more skeptical of big tech's promises. The cyberpunk authors were right about the dangers, but they also believed in human agency and resistance. The question is, whether we'll use ours before it's too late. What do you think? Are we living in the cyberpunk dystopia, or is there still time to change course? Let me know in the comments, and if this video changed how you see Silicon Valley, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into how fiction predicted our reality. The future is still being written. The question is, who's holding the pen?